Welcome to Panther and Cage.
There's one thing a man should always do, mainly to himself be true. Never let anyone change your point of view unless what he brings makes sense to you. You should never judge him by sight alone or by the height that he has grown. And when you're speaking, always keep a moderate tone, because raised voices, they turn hearts to stone. See, from the beginning, it was brother kill brother. The morals in life, live, love, and respect one another. But then there are those, they'll always try to be smart. They'll take a decent man and then they'll alter his heart until he seeks to tear them apart. These men, no man should call friends. They bend lies around truths until they meet their end.
Hello, and welcome back. Welcome to Panther and Cage, where we believe there's no such thing as a dumb question. Welcome to Panther and Cage Freestyle 8, a vlogcast where we take the time to elaborately speak on a variety of topics from a unique Afrocentric point of view. Panther and Cage is a weekly video logcast where we take advantage of the opportunities to engage in a significant and irrelevant progressive discussion in order to defeat those mediocre, socially accepted negative narratives that that perpetuate social and cultural bigotry. However, during that process, you, the Panther and Cage audience, are encouraged to responsibly comment, like, or share any content that you see on a Panther and Cage live stream, a Panther and Cage Facebook page, and anything presented on the YouTube channel. We are now streaming to YouTube. That makes you, the audience, the Panther and Cage audience, the most important part of this vlogcast. Your significant contributions can make this opportunity. It can make it an opportunity to grow. I'm your host, Panther, and your MC for this evening. If this is your first time joining us, I would like to welcome you, and I hope that you enjoy. I'm going to get to a few things on the Facebook, make sure everything's streaming, make sure everything is okay. Sometimes the room does not appear, and I will be sharing this to my personal Facebook page just to increase that audience. Do leave out a message, so all right, catch that in a moment. As I said, this is a freestyle, freestyle 8. And the freestyle conversations are conversations that you can ask any question that you like. And the question may not be completely relevant to tonight's current conversation. However, it may be something that you feel a great need to get off your chest, or if it's the appropriate time, you may want to allow, or just ask a question. Keep in mind that question can be facilitated a little better when you also source or bring credible information or objective sources to information that you may want to discuss. As you share, the more substantial the conversation can become. And this is the goal of these Panther and Cage vlogcasts. And the opening that you saw, that was viewed as it's about standing on the principle of integrity and looking deeper into the company that you surround yourself with. It is a Papa Rozier Farms commercial that was a real response to the African American History Month, when a man referred to simply as the oil baron Uncle B was asked, "America, where did we go from here?" Paparosia Farms is a Haiti-based company that produces cold-pressed castor oil and other organic healthcare products. I do believe they had things for to help you grow your hair more healthily. I'm gonna try to fix the lighting here. They also had some castor oil products to help you grow thicker lashes too. That's that for the ladies. So give me a moment. I'm just now getting into the Facebook feed. It is on a delay. All right. Sorry about the delay. Sometimes these things just take forever. I want to share this video and then we'll get right to it. Since it's a freestyle, it doesn't matter. Um, this is mainly for those individuals who want to ask specific questions. I know the most fielded question I keep getting asked is black on black crime. And I'm trying to get to it, but it is very important that we have to address the other issues surrounding it. And the truth is, I don't want to ask you guys or respond or tell you something and you sit there with a deer in the headlights because you're not ready to actually have that discussion. And it deals with a lot of the political displacement and understanding that African Americans, once we were brought to this country, that we didn't immigrate like everyone else. We didn't move to a particular area because the land or the soil was fertile in this particular area. We were actually brought on, in chains, and we weren't even given the condition, the human condition, or the human consideration. So once we were free, once the emancipation did occur, we were kind of trying to find a place that was suitable to us. So we had to take what we had, which was not much. It's not like we had a lot of wealth, and then we decided to try to find a new beginning after everyone else had started theirs. So this is a very contentious conversation. Some people will contend with it. Uh, I've seen them will many times because they, do not understand that, the form of immigration that they have in their head is not the form of immigration that truly was the idea for us. And then let's really call it for what it is. It's not immigration. It was true slavery, chattel slavery, not indentured servitude. There's a vast difference, but chattel slavery. So understanding that, we wanted to make sure that we have that groundwork laid out before we have that discussion. Um, and then the other question I do have to ask is those who are so interested in this question, this particular question about black on black crime. I wonder, are you truly, truly interested in the solution, or are you just looking for more ammunition to use on the other page or the other group where you can cite and uh, say dog whistle racist comments and get away with it? And that's a legitimate question, considering that I do see a lot of true dog whistle comments. And it's really weird because some of the people who perpetuate this stuff don't think that you can see them. And that is the weird thing. It's like the parent that is looking at the child and the child is trying to get away with a few things. It really doesn't make sense. So, all right, now that that's shared, I'm going to port myself over to the Let's Talk About It group so that I can make sure that I have access to comments that are made in that group. I am streaming to several different pages. and I do believe that I am ready. Okay, hopefully I can catch those comments as they come in live. In the Let's Talk About It group, you're going to have to click on the StreamYard link so that I can see and add you to the feed. It's extremely important that you do that if you really want me to know who's actually making comments. I am in there, so I'm going to try to see if I catch it. But like I said, there is a delay. And going ahead, I showed the Papa Rosier Farms commercial. If you have it, it really is a true commercial of Uncle B and his cold press as he was talking about where we go from there here, and he talked about the company that you keep. It was the most important part that I wanted you to get for this show because that's going to run with the theme. Okay, and today's theme is there are too many people who are afraid to confront the larger problems. There are too many people who choose to turn their heads and ignore the truth. To be ignorant by fear, simple acquiescence, or just indifference is still irresponsibility. There is no acceptable form of ignorance or irresponsibility. So today I'm going to have this, hopefully it's a quick one. I don't know, I'll just kind of feel it out. We'll see where it goes. I'm going to be placing a link in the comments as I showed you a commercial earlier, so you can go and take a look at that video yourself. You can hear some of the wisdom that was told to us by Uncle B, a man simply known as Uncle B. I'm going to be placing the comments here in the Let's Talk About It group also. So that may slow me down a little bit tonight, but this is a freestyle, no true agenda, but there are some things that I did want to talk about. A key note, there was an anniversary on May the 20th, and that was of the emancipation from slaves in Florida. So there is an article I do have, and I wanted to actually process that, but I didn't get around to it tonight. We may just kind of do it raw dog here, and we'll just let you know what we find. I'm going to also place a link for the Rosier, Papa Rosier Farms. So there you can go ahead and check out their customer reviews and shop for their products that I mentioned earlier. Once I do that, I've done my little plug for tonight. We try to promote businesses, especially Black-owned business. All right. All right. So getting right into this, the last Panther in Cage, we covered a few things that we were kind of behind on. We were behind a little bit on the Derek Chauvin verdict. And the reason being is because once we looked at it, we decided that there was a conversation that needed to be had. And it was obvious because once the verdict was read, individuals wanted to ask the question, where do we go from here? Which is the reason why the video that you just previously watched up tonight. The question was, what does freedom look like to us? What does justice look like to us? These are questions that are very controversial because if you can ask a white American this question, the answer will be different than a Black American. And not all Black, we understand. But the fact is that there are some people who don't hold the same version of what justice and what freedom and what equality even is. So this is why we have to have these uncomfortable conversations. So we talked a little bit about the Derek Chauvin trial, and we talked about the verdict, which the status of that, and what we talked about specifically was that Derek Chauvin had, or the defense team for Derek Chauvin recently filed a motion for a new trial, and that was because the pretrial publicity was negatively affecting his right to a fair trial. Chauvin's defense team says that the guilty verdict should be impeached because the jury was subjected to intimidation and race-based pressure. I I asked the questions: why does it feel like there's a pressure for someone to do what is right? We asked the question: why, when it comes to race, do we feel the need to adjudicate right and wrong? Is it wrong to be Black? Is it, and if it isn't, then why do many feel like the need to criminalize and weaponize our possession of melanin? What is the personal investment of such actions? And we also asked, is it wrong to be white? So these are questions that I never got any answers to. I know this is very difficult. I know this is very shaky for a lot of people. It's not a big issue as you may think. Simple answers can actually lead to a conversation where enlightenment can be had. So, like I said, I got no answers for that. That's fine. Those questions will remain. And note that when we have the discussion, or when it comes back around, especially for the Black on Black crime, that every conversation that everybody is so itching to have, when I ask those questions, you're not going to be able to have that conversation until I get some answer. Okay. So this isn't just to beat you down, to beat you up. These are questions that need to be stated, need to be talked about, so you can have progressive conversations about these matters. We explored those questions that were associated to the perspective of justice in America. We talked a little bit about the juror named Brandon Mitchell, who may be subjected to what was called a Schwartz hearing. Brandon Mitchell had attended a Washington, D.C. Event, the 57th anniversary of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech event. He did that on August the 28th of 2020, which gave the central message: vote and demand change at the ballot box in November. This matter is very controversial because the lack of resolution to the African American diaspora. Most of the issues that face Black America have been postponed to the point that when there is an event like this, such as this, which is also associated to Martin Luther King Jr., every last one of the social, systemic, economic issues are going to be brought up, and they're going to be taken up for conversation. Because the event dealt with how to deal with a part of the systemic racism, we ended up talking about the tip of an iceberg as a metaphor. We ended up talking about systemic racism. Now here, we took a look at the personification of when you are seeing the riots and the looting and the activism, you're seeing the tip of what is like an iceberg. Below the observing sea level is the massive ice, as you can see here below to my image to the left. This massive ice is a representation of the years of inaction, years of disenfranchisement, and the snubbing of which is the cause of the rioting and the looting. Martin Luther King Jr. quoted that writing was the language of the unheard. So this is telling you that, another metaphor for, things that weren't dealt with, things that were left unfinished. And so at the end, what you see is, you just see the tip. You just see the writing and the looting, or many people do, because I know that there are others who actually understand this concept. But to those who don't understand it and cannot understand why these events happened in 2020, they had to understand that these were the result of the unanswered systemic issues. With all those systemic issues, like the long history of police brutality, there you see, and the racist politicians working simultaneously over a period of time, being ignored and solutions postponed. Something like the 9-minute lynching of George Floyd could cause America's reaction. It could ignite the fire that has been smoldering under systemic oppression. Um, and I don't think that's up for debate. I mean, anybody can get in there and ask a question or say, or, like I said, responsibly comment. And what I mean by that is no name calling. We ain't got to go there. I don't, no one really does it to me, but I've seen it done to some battle buddies of mine. And the name calling doesn't get you anywhere. You want to bring the issue, bring the issue. I'd rather talk and chop up the issue. And try to leave those labels unless you're actually describing a narrative. Because to label me a conservative or a liberal, you'll probably be wrong later on down the line as we continue to talk. You'll see my ideas actually expand the lines that you've drawn up, whatever that little box is that you like to get people in before you have that conversation. I don't do those boxes. I actually think about the issues and I actually move forward on researching that too. So those boxes don't seem to work for me. I wouldn't try to do that. That's a waste of time. As we move forward, we also last Panther and Cage, not last week, but last Panther and Cage, we talked about Jonathan Pentland. We covered the video of the off-duty drill sergeant, Sergeant First Class Jonathan Pentland, pushing and threatening a 22-year-old man identified only as DeAndre. And as a part of this physical confrontation where Pentland proclaimed that he had never seen DeAndre before and that he was walking in the wrong neighborhood. Of course, Pentland was insinuating that DeAndre was harassing and aggressing on the Summit subdivision neighborhood. But what I found interesting was the other woman in the dark shirt in the video, in the green shorts, standing on the grass next to DeAndre. She was the one who initially ran up to DeAndre, which I initially found out through research that he, according to the Richland County Sheriff's Department, did live in that neighborhood. Okay, so he did live in that neighborhood. He stated that he had lived there before Jonathan Pentland. And that says a lot. That actually says quite an ordeal. There are other things surrounding this case that's well, let's go ahead and talk about it. Getting back to that woman, that is that woman that was standing on the side. You can't see in the picture, but I think she walked away at this point in time when he was actually pushed, and she came back, and that was because somebody at her house, the neighboring house, was trying to call law enforcement, but she was letting know that law enforcement had already been called. So, that woman is the woman that you hear, Cassie Pentland, the wife of Jonathan Pentland. That's the woman that's, when you hear her referring to, she said, you picked a fight with some random young lady that's one of our neighbors. So that lady stood by. I don't know what the altercation was. They won't release. There was 2 other incidents, but the Richland County Sheriff's Department said that they are not associated to this incident. So they're not going to release information about that. They also didn't release this individual's last name, because he was the victim. So I think, Richland County is doing an excellent job when it comes to keeping this, kind of quiet enough that it does not become an issue. And I would say, this is kind of, I guess, somewhat of a model that most police departments should be looking for when it comes to how they are going to deal with the public or how they're going to deal with these communities. DeAndre could be heard telling the lady Cassie Pentland that he didn't pick a fight with anyone, and that he was the one who someone had run up to him. So it was also reported that Sergeant First Class Pentland slapped DeAndre's hand, and his cell phone was cracked. And the Richland County Sheriff's Department said DeAndre had an underlying medical condition, and that could be why the previous incidents were not assumed to be a part of that incident, which happened here, this incident here, which happened on April 12th. So there was some information there that they didn't give, just an underlying medical condition. That may have made it worse, being he's, he should be used to dealing with certain people, a variety of people, especially being a drill sergeant. So After the Richland County Sheriff's Department built a case for Pentland to be charged with the misdemeanor third-degree assault and battery, Pentland was arrested. And the most interesting thing about that was saying that, is him saying that you were in the wrong neighborhood. And we talked about that kind of language before, and we're going to be talking about it soon. But how it has direct correlation with the systemic racist Reconstruction era policies that create the white communities and they created Black communities. And they're even brought up when a person's mugshot is circulated or flashed onto the screen. Now, like I said, we are going to soon have a Panther in Cage where we're going to be talking about these issues. And those issues are going to be dealing with, let me go ahead and get this off the screen so you guys can, I don't work you guys too much. But those are going to be some of the issues that we're going to be talking about on a future Panther in Cage when we talk about blockbustering, gentrification, redlining, and gerrymandering. And if you are not familiar with any of those terms, I would Google them. You're getting a head start here, okay? So we're going to be covering that soon. But I ask my viewers to be patient with us as we attempt to retain the relevancy and the continuity that's necessary. It is extremely important to African Americans that we appropriately approach these issues so that they're not lost in Candace Owens' memes, thinking that Black people are lazy and the current diaspora is a result of that laziness. And I hate bringing up her name, but she's just one of many. Candace Owens never really talks about the courthouse burnings. She never talked about sundown towns, which we, like I said, we tried to cover that in a past Panther in Cage. If I were you, I would go get this book. It's very informative, has a lot of information. Get this, and then there is another book about the history of Florida. I would tell you to get that book about history of Florida. Once you read that, then read Sundown Towns. There's a lot that's going to come out. There's going to be a lot that you'll be informed of. But like I said, we don't see some of these pundits talk about sundown towns and how sundown towns were even developed. And I'm telling you, there's a reason for it. All right. So if any of those topics interest anyone out there in the Panther in Cage audience, you're more than welcome. You can view the last Panther in Cage, which was Panther in Cage 18.5. You can view that on the Panther in Cage Facebook page for a more detailed presentation of what we're talking about right now. I don't believe there's any comments. Let me go ahead and check. I'm looking here to make sure. Nope, don't see any comments. All right, let's get back to the business at hand. Okay. In addition to the recent signing of the new COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act by President Biden, a bill requiring public schools to teach Asian American history was passed in the Illinois Lower House of Representatives by a vote of 98-13. The Teaching Equitable Asian American Community History Act will now go to the Senate for deliberations. And if passed, the bill would mandate teaching of a unit of Asian American history in public elementary and high schools starting in the 2022-2023 school year. Now, the Teaching Equitable Asian American Community History Act has been promoted since early 2020, but it gained traction in the legislature following the executions of the Asian women in the Atlanta area in March. Now, the bill would make Illinois the first state to mandate a unit of Asian American history in schools. And I can't say that this is true progress because research has turned over that African American history has been pulled from from schools such as like in the Houston school curriculum, along with Native American history. I have no idea how, but yes, this is a healthy way of looking at it because they don't want the critical race theory curriculum being taught in schools, but they mandate this, and so there's issues with education. But this is a small step in the right direction for Illinois. But if that's going to be, include an accurate portrayal of Vietnam and the Japanese internment camps when they actually teach this African American history, I can concede that it is a victory for Illinois. The Teach Act is a direct result of the Illinois legislators who have been listening to the Asian American community. That could be another, I don't know if it could be another model minority privilege there. I don't want to knock it down. It's just something that, I want to bring up and make sure that, let you know these issues have been thought about. And what I found interesting enough to bring up for potential discussion is a professor at Georgia's Kennesaw State University by the name of So-Young Ung. She said, if we don't teach it, or if we teach it in a misrepresented way, it can lead to violence. Keep that in mind, okay? Now, I want you to listen to those words. She said, if we teach it in a misrepresented way, it can lead to violence. Now, remember back on Panther and Cage Freestyle 6 when Ashley Park said that Asian hate started with one single word like Kung Flu or little passive jokes about race?
Honestly, I'm so tired of people not knowing what's going on. These hate and invasion is from any last night's shootings with the acts of violence against the Asian elderly, with all of these close to 4,000 hate crimes that have happened in the past year. I'm always wondering why, like, how did it come to this? Like, why is there that hate? And these things happen when people have rage and entitlement, and when they prey on the weak. And I really don't want to deal with it better than I'm dealing with it now. And I just want to say these things. Yes, it comes from entitlement and rage, but this racism starts at a very small level. It starts with things that you say. It starts when someone calls a virus that shut down the whole world the Kung Flu virus. But it also starts when you roll your eyes or make fun of the Asian waiters and Chinese delivery food people and the nail artists. And, I'm guilty of that too. And the amount of times in my life that I've been asked where I'm from before I'm asked what my name is. I'm okay, but that, you don't understand, or you do understand the undervaluing that does. And when starting with children, when every Asian kid should be able to be good at math and to be able to play a classical instrument and not be bullied and shunned and told you're only good at that because you're Asian. That makes literally no sense. It starts with like the stupid little jokes, even with your close friends. It starts with saying, oh, this is a good time for you to be in that industry because ethnic is really in right now. I could go on and on and on. And this is not about that. It's just like this 21-year-old with a gun last night. He came from somewhere. And at some point, someone could have told him what he was feeling and thinking. And that hate was wrong. And it starts at a really small level.
If we teach it in a misrepresented way, it can lead to violence, like insurrection violence, like vigilante frontier justice violence, like lynchings that mysteriously get labeled as suicide. This concept is a reality, and it's shared by African Americans even at the mere unconscious level. This has been a reason why many African Americans have fought for the acknowledgement for the need of African American history being taught in public schools, and being taught in a manner that actually humanizes us, versus the way has been misrepresented, the way it is being misrepresented. Excuse my trip up, because there's a lot there to it. I keep thinking of some of the things that I'm going to be talking about later tonight, and then there's other things that I'm not going to be showing. But there's a reason why I'm saying it's currently being misrepresented, and you'll see as we get in further tonight. But I don't think that anyone should bother challenging me on that, because there's so much information out there. Like I said, it tripped me up because there's so much that's out there. But every week, though, the evidence to this too also is that every week we bring you guys information that sheds a little more light on the issue that you were previously already talking about in some Facebook group, and you thought that you had a full hold on the understanding of that issue, and you didn't accurately think about how the issue became an issue, how racism socializes people. The commonly shared Black experience, that is the struggle that shouldn't really exist. How misrepresented Aunt Jemima was, and that, and what it's always meant to conscious African Americans. And that's an issue. That's been an issue. I remember I was actually when I was younger and I was dating someone, and we were in the store. I think we were in Publix, and we were in Publix, and they mentioned getting the Aunt Jemima, and I was like, put that mess down. I don't do Aunt Jemima, and she wondered why, and I basically had to say it a couple times, and I think there was a lady on the aisle with us, but I said, Aunt Jemima, Aunt Jemima, it ain't your mama, it ain't your mama, and so when you see this in the image alone, it was just, and I think, because of that, that was a moment where, to a conscious African American, where I could see it, but another person could see it. Now, this didn't mean that person was racist or anything, but it just meant that they weren't conscious to the idea of what it was, what it actually said. Now, when you go back and you check out one of the other Panther in Cages, I do believe it's Panther in Cage 8.0. We talked about the stereotypes, I believe, or was it 8.5? I believe we talked about stereotypes. And Sambo was one of the stereotypes that we talked about. That's a very important one to know. We've yet to do Uncle Tom, and we will get to that. We're just working on some special stuff right now. But getting back to the subject at hand at this moment, we talk about these misrepresentations. We talk about how misrepresented Malcolm X was, and what that, and how that misrepresentation was used by the U.S. government to create an ideological divide in the national Black identity. That's a loaded, controversial statement. We're going to show you about that tonight. So we're going to talk more about how misrepresented Martin Luther King Jr. is, by those pundits who would shout that King wouldn't want protest, when his whole philosophical ideal is based in civil disobedience, nonviolent civil disobedience. They never actually listened to MLK's speeches to hear why he said nonviolent civil disobedience was employed. That is one of the indicators to how an invested American can actually identify the disingenuousness of the other person or the other party that's using that misrepresentation. And when it's done intentionally, it's hurtful. So their solution to civil unrest is to follow Martin Luther King Jr., but yet they don't know Martin Luther King Jr. or history. So Ashley Park, who just showed you that video, sorry about the audio dragging. Sometimes when I shoot in a high definition, the audio drags, and sometimes it fits. It's really weird with this software. So Ashley Park anyway exposed the fact that there are philosophical conflictions that exist, and that they have a greater impact upon society. That's the reason why I showed that video again. It prevents us from standing together to fight the injustices that are triggered by racism, hatred, and violence in America.
At that time, the media, the nation, tried to divide us as a people.
Come on now.
They tried to divide us into two groups. There were the followers of Dr. King and nonviolence, and they demonized Malcolm. They would preferred for us, take this thing on. They preferred for us to be nonviolent. When Malcolm was saying the ballot or the bullet, and that he was espousing what Christ said about if they hit you on the one cheek, why are you going to allow them to hit you on the other cheek? No, hit them back. So they used Malcolm and Dr. King against one another. That's what they tried to do, and to divide our people in that way. However, what they don't talk about is when Dr. King and Malcolm came together. They came together over the Vietnam War and the fact that why should our young men, black young men, be the fodder for the United States government in Vietnam? Because they were sending our brothers over to Vietnam. If somebody got in trouble with the police, one of the ways they were allowed to get out of trouble, well, you can either go to jail or you can go to Nam. And a lot of young men went to Vietnam.
That was a lady by the name of, just simply, I could only find or identify her as Miss Evelyn. And they were talking about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And this is an event that was dedicated to the remembrance of Malcolm X. That was someone who actually had seen the civil rights movement, someone who is giving you their account, their own personal perspective or their personal account of what was occurring when, as they were alive. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is in your grandparents. Your grandparents they have this knowledge. Sometimes they allow their political, philosophical hang-ups to prevent them from telling you about the facts or the details of these situations that occurred back in the 60s. Oftentimes, their philosophies are antiquated. And you have to actually talk to them so that you can understand how or why that may be. Not that their solutions weren't solutions at the time, but you have to understand that society presses forward, and as society presses forward, new ideas and new solutions need to be implemented. So, grandfather's idea of just, working hard, and there's a specific someone that says, my grandfather says we just have to work hard. And no, working hard doesn't work when they push the cost of living consistently is being pushed forward, it's being pushed up. Unemployment has always been a problem and continues to be a problem. And someone can say, well, people aren't grabbing jobs, but the truth is most of your companies are now moving to automation. You already complained about the long lines at Walmart because of a lack of cashiers, and now most of the equipment there has moved to the tech side, to where you are now checking your own self out. You don't get paid to check your own groceries out. So think about how much they're saving, but additionally how much you're hurting your America's biggest resource, which is its human resource. So we have to start thinking and talking about those things. So when a politician gets up and says, yeah, we created new jobs, new jobs for who? And then, like I said before, we don't talk about the phasing out of particular positions or jobs And then, we're looking at a machine that drives itself to buff the floor at night, for some of our supermarkets. So it's a big issue. It's something that needs to be talked about. But in talking to your grandparents, you can learn a lot, especially when it comes to the civil rights movement. Now, I see you there, Willie Taylor. How you doing, brother? Hope everything's all right. Now, a great example of how the teachings and the philosophies of the Black civil rights movement of the 60s were manipulated and misrepresented through the media. That is what the testimony of the woman that you heard there, Miss Evelyn, substantiated. That there was a part of the government initiated program called COINTELPRO, and simply just Google. It's that easy. COINTELPRO was a series of covert and illegal projects that were conducted by the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation. And it was aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and also disrupting the domestic American political organizations that were associated to Black nationalism. So we are definitely going to talk more on the Black leaders of the 1960s civil rights movement and their philosophies in the future. But we won't cover that until we discuss leadership, okay? It's important that we get these things down so we can understand the different forms of leadership, because often, these are the only two leaders that you see to my left that are brought up. The Black Panthers are brought up, and how they were actually an actual political party, an independent political party that, they didn't want, and how this didn't catch on. So there were other movements that were not actually talked about on the biggest level, but the most common was Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, which Malcolm X actually was a part of the Nation of Islam. And so when we're dealing with that, we are dealing with religion on both sides, but one being Muslim, one being Christian. So just wanted to go ahead and make sure and make that statement there so you guys can see the philosophical teachings of the 1960s Black civil rights leaders in the movement. They were intentionally manipulated, and they are currently still being misrepresented through political media. And I'll prove that to you in a few moments. Now, getting back to the TEACH Act, the Illinois Superintendent of Education seen here to my left, which I assume is Dr. Carmen Ayala, pictured here to my left. She's being called upon to make instructional materials available to the school boards, and that's including the curriculum reported to be developed by the public broadcasting service Asian Americans, which is a 5-hour docuseries which aired last May. And I watched the beginning of that docuseries, and it seemed to be okay. It chronicles the contributions and challenges of the Asian Americans and their personal histories, and new dynamic research was casting a fresh lens on the U.S. history and the role that Asian Americans have played within it. So they glossed over quite a bit, but I thought it was an excellent source to at least start your independent research upon.
I'm here today so the rest of this world hears our story. For 4.5 years, my family was incarcerated. The government framed it as an issue of loyalty.
Many people lose everything. The Asian voices were so inspirational.
They had to assert their rights.
The railroad could not have been built without the Chinese.
We fought on the side of the United States. There was a shift in political power.
Asian Americans were free to do anything they wanted. All hell broke loose.
The city burned.
They were trying to build a life for themselves.
I grew up with the American dream.
You've got young people fighting to make change happen. If a lot of people put their mind to it, they can win.
It was an incredible time.
And their legacy belongs to all of us.
This is our story.
Now, while that video was playing, I went ahead and placed a link in there to the, so you guys can go ahead and catch that on YouTube. You can also go to the PBS website and check out the video docuseries. I think I saw the first one, which is like Breaking Ground. I didn't get a chance to watch the others. I've been really been busy this week. Had a very important meeting on Thursday. My son is playing basketball, so it's kind of like, I really stuck to doing a couple of things. So I haven't had a chance to actually research that, even though this has been an issue. The documentary has been out for a year now, and that I've known about it for about 2 weeks now. So I want to bring that information to you guys. Check it out. If you want to talk about something that I haven't seen on there yet, go ahead and get back to me. Maybe it'll encourage me to go ahead and watch it immediately. I kind of took a break. I've been kind of watching this Kwame Brown. A lot of people have been watching that too. So we're not going to discuss that tonight. I don't think anybody's ready for that conversation. If you are, this is the show to try to bring it up. So getting back to understanding that So-Yoon Ah's words hold a level of legitimacy, and that, I want to bring something else back up. I've been doing this for the past couple of weeks, and it's important. I'm going to keep doing it until we get there, because Panther cage don't quit. So, and that is going to be regarding the African American history in public school national initiative. Now, it was a petition on the change.org that was started by a friend of mine, Connie Samarine, and I'm going to put a link for that petition in the comment section below to give us an opportunity to change with our voice. Black history is a vital part of our collective American history, and to understand that, that can't be argued with. All right, I know this critical race theory is I'm not pushing critical race theory specifically, because I know that's supposed to be the legal existence of racism in America, but it existed far beyond America, and it existed far beyond the legal system, which may have tracked it to 1680, I believe. That's, a lot of information there that's missing. All right, I need you guys to understand that, because I've seen people who have posted it and talked about it. Keep in mind what the lady's saying, where she's seen it represented, the concept of whiteness or the concept of race represented in the legal form. She may have found that back in 1618, but I can guarantee you they were already usurping Black prisoners of war up in early 1500s. Okay, we know that slavery existed for people of color when we talk about the Hebrews in the Bible. So, not going to get into detail. You want to get into that conversation, you can head on over to the Let's Talk About It group. Maybe we'll start another conversation about that. I know it gets really touchy when we talk about religion, and that's cool with me until the truth is yet to be revealed. But like I said, we don't just gloss over stuff here at Panther Cage. We explore it, we examine it, we analyze it, and we are going to have a discussion about it. And that's just what we do. So anything contrary, like I said, cannot be responsible to argue. The fact is that Eurocentricity has dominated our American education system. That is 100% fact. Okay, so in an effort to be able to mitigate this issue, we're going to be trying to sign any petitions that are putting African American history in the public school system, because it is important, especially here in Brevard County. We have our own local legends that were before some of the other civil rights legends, and most people don't even know about that. I talked to an attorney last week, and he didn't know about some of the details surrounding the Harriet Moore situation. But we had a nice conversation, and it was wonderful to be able to bring that information to him. But this is the kind of stuff that the kids need to understand, especially these young Black men. You guys are getting arrested and going to the courthouse. The courthouse is named after Harriet Moore. If you don't know the history, but yet you're going to a building where you're going to basically give up your right, it's kind of asinine. All right. So to my young men out there in the community, you need to actually realize the impact of what African American history has contributed to Brevard County. I saw some young men at a basketball game during the week, and I had to let these young men know that you're sitting in a building that used to be the Black high school. So everyone who knows that Gibson Community Center, that there in Titusville, that was the Black high school, because Titusville High, during those times of segregation before the early 70s, that was the Black school. Gibson was the Black school. So that's some information that definitely needs to be cited and researched. Not even needs to be researched, but just needs to be talked about amongst these members of the community. Telly, I forgot to get with you this weekend and talk to you about the Unity and Community Initiative. Hopefully I can get you on and we can talk a little more about that. I know you're busy. I've been, busy too. So hopefully I'll get around to that. But I'll get to you and I'll message you, man, or hopefully I can catch you in the community and then pull you to the side and talk about that a little bit. But I watched a documentary about some of the things that were occurring in China. And I had to agree with Trump about how China does the business. And that, I'm sure that many people don't even like to hear me say that name, Trump. But, we could never talk about the pressing international issues and the advancement of AI, artificial intelligence in China, because we as people of color are defending our right to equality, which is ridiculous that we are still having to do that today. But like I said, that stifles the conversations that we may need to actually have. And for African Americans, that means the right to life. When we're trying to talk about this equality, it's not just, a mute concept. We're actually trying to convince you or talk to you about our right to life, that we are owed that, because it's so easy for people to make it an excuse to just to taking a life just because someone's developed a drug problem. And all these excuses for George Floyd that, I've never seen anyone level-headed enough that was actually speaking on an open mic and say that this man had been deprived due process. Simply, I've heard so many different arguments, but the fact is, I don't care if he was guilty, he was owed the right to due process. All right, not this Judge Dredd brand new, I'm your executioner behavior, unintentional or not. Either way, regardless of how one side feels or acts, if this man is robbed of his life, because of due process was unjustly disregarded. So I mean that's just a fact. All right, I'm sure that the audience can come into agreement with me regarding part of that solution would be to like the Teach Act here, make change to the national education curriculum. All right, we know that that's an issue because they're trying to push the critical race theory right now. And I want to believe that, this would lead to a generational shift in regard to the attitudes and the behavior of race-related issues. Now, in order to address this collective identity issue facing the African-American community specifically, we need to see our history restored and portrayed accurately, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and put this link in the comment section. I'm going to put it in the Let's Talk About It group. It should not take me too long. It didn't just for the other. Go ahead and visit that. You're right. It is a small step that could make a huge difference. What I mean by that, everybody, there was a comment that was made, and I'm going to highlight the comment now. It is absolutely correct. It is a small step that could make a huge difference. And keep in mind, this Teach Act is only in Illinois, only in Chicago. I know they have issues with their gang violence and everything else, but this is, this is something that we need to actually really pay attention to when we talk about the progress made in specific areas. We often wonder, is this going to be, the right move? How's this going to look? There's all this fear that's driven around certain changes that are made in our society. But as we watch and see how this works, because if this happens to work in Chicago, then I say we push forward in other states It only makes sense. But Chicago has like one of the worst history. I bring that up because Chicago is one of the worst histories right now when it comes to violence. So if we can see a difference in Chicago, excuse me, if we can see a difference in Chicago, then we definitely can see a difference in Florida. We definitely can see a difference in Georgia. Definitely we'd see a difference in Texas. Some of these issues, there's no excuse to it. All right, moving forward. I check the comments. I don't see any additional new comments. Now, I want you to get a load of this, because this is the meat and potatoes of this live stream here. Cage, if you're out there, I would love to just get your opinion about this. This is, you saw this coming. Reiterating the media pundits' misrepresentation of Martin Luther King Jr., of what King would have wanted or he intended, I came across the perfect example of what I was referring to earlier. Now, Jason Whitlock is a well-known conservative media pundit who continues to tap dance his way around a tree. And in a recent PragerU video, Jason attempts to convince you, the American people, that you don't want to live in a country where all your needs are taken care of by the government. Now, it may be just an attempt to justify capitalism over socialism by the reason I was just interested in showing our audience in the lie that he imposes upon the viewers about Martin Luther King Jr. But I've chopped this up in this segment so that we can kind of talk about this. So kind of bear with me. You're not going to get to the meat of what I'm saying about the misrepresentation until the second video. So they're about two and a half minutes long each one. So if you can sit through this stomach churning, I promise I won't do this to y'all again. I'm sorry. I really am.
I want to tell you something that everybody once knew, and now many have either forgotten or never learned. Pay very close attention. America promises you freedom. America does not promise you love. Let's start with the freedom part. It's all right there in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Free speech. Freedom to practice the religion of your choice. The purpose of government is to protect your freedom, period. America was a rough and tumble place in its early days. It still is. Let's hope it always remains so. You don't want to live in a country where all your needs are taken care of by the government. That's not how you become great. That's how you become dependent, vulnerable, and truly oppressed. America is a land of opportunity for anyone of any color. Just follow some basic rules. Get an education, work hard, act responsibly, and you'll have a good shot at a good life. But you might also fail. You might fail a bunch of times and then succeed. Or you might succeed and blow it all. That's America, a never-ending dance of risk and reward, all made possible by freedom. Freedom is America's source of power, and the denial of that power to Black people and others at the inception of this nation and for nearly 200 years after its founding remains a stain and a source of pain.
All right, we made it through that video. I hope you didn't have to run to the bathroom. That one wasn't as hard as the next, but the key word that was kind of sickening in this one was the get an education, work hard, act responsibly, and you'll have a good shot at life. If you listen to what he's saying, hold on. Let me backtrack because it's so sickening. I almost jumped ahead. I remember this very subject came up in school when I was younger. And I got in trouble for questioning what was the pursuit of happiness. I know that the teacher didn't want me to dissect the complexities of that and the possible meaning of the pursuit of happiness. But here's Jason, and he's saying like it from what he's saying, it sounds like a big crapshoot. All right. I don't mean to insult it. It sounds insulting because if you listen to what he actually said, he basically talked about it like it was a a big glorified gamble with your life and your security. And I'm just like, what a selling point, right? He says, that but you also might fail. You might fail a bunch of times and then succeed, or you might succeed and blow it all. That's America, a never-ending dance of risk and reward. Mm, mm. I'm just saying that might be plausible if you don't guarantee to take 20% of my paycheck, that's guaranteed, but everything else is a risk, right? Yeah. Okay. I get into that too much. But like I said, it sounds like a crapshoot. So if you listen to what he says and just follow some basic rules, et cetera, then, he says that the denial of power or freedom here in this sense to Black people and others at the inception of this nation for nearly 200 years after its founding, it remains a source of pain. Those are the last words he said when the video ended. Now, we're gonna go back to it. We're gonna, right here. So I want you to see this. He says 200 years. A lot more than 200 years, everybody. A lot more than 200 years, okay? I guess he's taking away segregation. Listen, frontier justice, lynching, that's not freedom. That's not freedom. And I'm going to give you an example of why. Because I'm going to give you an example, and let's just say this date that I'm going to give you an example of is in 1931. And we're just going to touch on it, but I'm going to give you an example of what freedom is supposed to look like, for us, right? I can't. It's this guy. This guy.
Yes, some of the founders had slaves, but almost all of them knew that it was morally wrong and would one day end. When Thomas Jefferson wrote the words, "All men are created equal," the slavery question was resolved. The only issue was how and when. And it took a lot longer than it should have, but it did end. And a lot of good people died on the battlefield to see that it did. And when it ended, giants like Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass understood that Black Americans would have to succeed on their own as free men and women. They had no illusions that the government would save them. They only wanted what all Americans should ever want the government to do: protect their freedom. But the founders never promised love, not to whites or Blacks or anyone else. During his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, Martin Luther King referenced freedom 20 times. He never once spoke the word love. Why not? Because America has nothing to do with that. If you want love, and we all do, look to God, your family, and your friends. The government doesn't love you and isn't supposed to. The government is a poor and abusive provider. It offers the bare minimum and fosters a dependency that undermines freedom. During the 2020 Black Lives Matter season, NBA players actually wore jerseys with the slogan, "Love Us," emblazoned on the back. You can't demand love from people. Love is freely given or not given at all. Telling people not to call you this name or that name, or not to act this way or that way, consciously or unconsciously, because it offends you, will not bring you love. Love is your mother's smile, or that look your kid gives you when you come home from work. Love is that man or woman who protects you when you're scared and provides a home where you can flourish. And love is what God offers you every moment of every day.
Give you a second to let your stomach settle. Because yes, he did actually say that. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. All right. He actually brought up Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson. Yes, some of the founders had slaves, and almost all of them knew that it was more morally wrong and one day it would end. So they're just going to continue to make money. They're going to continue to allow this free labor to benefit them and establish wealth for them in this new country, even though they know that it's morally wrong, but they're going to write that all men are created equal. Oh yeah, that's right. We got to talk about a 3/5 compromise. We don't want to get into that yet, right? Because that's where they assumed that we weren't even half the human, right? So it's very controversial. Why he picked that to say that? Anyways, he said that Thomas Jefferson wrote, because Thomas Jefferson wrote all men were created equal, that the slavery question was resolved. No, it wasn't. This is a lie. This is misrepresentation. This is a manipulation. It's not. It never has. Oh boy. The only issue was how and when. Conflicting himself. And then to bring up Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass. Remember I talked about the older and the antiquated ways of life or solutions? Let's apply that, sparingly here. We'll talk about that in a future Panther and Cage. A lot of stuff that, like I said, is brought up, and we don't want to go to those conversations until we establish the facts. So we're not here to argue, and just to close off, we're here to establish what is fact, perspectives that are related or associated to those facts. Okay. Now, one of the things that I want to specifically address was what he said here was during the famous I Have a Dream speech, Dr. Martin Luther King referenced freedom 20 times and they never spoke of the word love. Okay. I want all of y'all to pay attention to that, right? Miss Evelyn earlier referred to in that video what she referred to earlier about the media representation of the Black leaders of the 1960s civil rights movement and that their philosophies for our future, they were used against each other. They were trying to basically destroy everything that was Black national initiative, any movement that was associated to the Black national initiative. Now, the I Have a Dream speech is not the only speech that Martin Luther King Jr. ever spoke. All right, I need people to understand that. So when you start talking, you have to talk with some common sense here. You got to talk with some reasoning and have some ability here, okay? Here, understand that it's not the only speech that he spoke. It's not the only one that he executed. You need to understand not just the speech, but understand his philosophy, okay? To my recollection, the I Have a Dream speech did not say the word love, to my recollection, right? But I know that it references brotherhood a few times, and I know that it explicitly represents or explicitly says the words police brutality a couple times too, all right? Check that out. In fact, somebody fact check me. If you get in there, if you want to look it up and you fact check me, I'd rather even my enemies could do that. I remember a few of the speeches because of his few of his speeches covering love. And that's how I knew I would be able to find this video I'm about to show you covering his explanation of agape love. I remember he even said something about eros being a word that describes love, and that he remembered that one because he used it when he was courting his wife. So so now you can see the social political misrepresentation. You're going to see that when you hear this video of the civil rights leader, Martin Luther King Jr., which you saw Jason Whitlock just do. And you can see that now that video was just posted a couple days ago. So you can see that it still happens today. Now, Whitlock should be personally ashamed of himself, but I'm going to just reserve my judgment right now because, Jason misrepresented and got MLK wrong. You got to ask yourself, how accurate was his presentation about Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass? How accurate was that? And that's just an objective question. Okay, but for the purpose, like he said, that Martin Luther King mentioned freedom 20 times, and he never once spoke about love. So here we're not even gonna just go into the speech. We could go to the speech, find that for somebody else who can fact check me. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about his philosophy.
people ask me about it all the time. So what do you mean when you tell us to love these people who are beating on us and bombing our houses and kicking our children around? What in the world do you mean when you say love such people? And I always have to stop and try to define the meaning of love in this area. And interestingly enough, Greek philosophy comes to our aid at this point. There are three words in the Greek language for love. One of them is the word eros. Now, eros is a sort of aesthetic love. It has come to us to mean a sort of romantic love, and so we all know about eros. We've experienced it. We've read about it in the beauties of literature. Then the Greek language talks about phileo, which is another level of love. It is an intimate affection between personal friends. On this level, we love because we are loved. We love people that we like. This is friendship. Then the Greek language has another word called agape. Agape is more than romantic love. Agape is more than friendship. Agape is not something affectionate. Agape is understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill for all men. It is an overflowing love which seeks nothing in return. Theologians would say that it is the love of God operating in the human heart. And when one rises to love on this level, he loves men not because he likes them, but he loves every man because God loves him. He goes on with that. And so he rises to the level of hating the system rather than the individual who is caught up in that system. He loves a person and hates the evil deed. And I think this is what Jesus meant when he said, love your enemies. And I'm happy that he didn't say like your enemies, because it's pretty difficult to like some people. It's difficult to like people bombing your home and threatening your children and kicking you about. But Jesus says love them, and love is greater than like. Love is understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill for all men. And somehow, more and more I've come to believe this. That this is the way that we will get out of this dark night of oppression.
Now, that's a very powerful speech. When he talks about those, there's a lot he was talking about. I mean, you start to kind of imagine when you really do a lot of your research, you start looking at some of the history. What you find is the bombing of the churches, which were the schoolhouses too. Sometimes at that time, that there was nowhere for them to go. No matter where they went, they were hunted. We talked about this in a previous Panther cage. We talked about Kuka's Klan and their night raids. So when we talk about this and him saying that to love someone, the word in a sense was truly developed within his Christian faith, his Judeo-Christian faith, I should say. It is hard to swallow. But understand that the love that he was talking about, which I identify when you talk about someone's mutual well-being, and I understand and I know what that is. Like when I'm at work or whatever, I constantly have my kids in the back of my mind because I love them both and all three actually. But I love them and I want them to be safe. I think I say my two younger children because my oldest can handle himself now. So, when you're thinking of your little ones, you're like, okay, they should be getting home right now. I hope that they made it home from the bus stop. Hope that, so you got this constant well-being, this concern. And if you can just have that small level of concern with, your neighbor or with someone, one of your friends, then this would make the world a better place. But some people don't want to accept that. Some people don't want to talk about that. They rather quote Martin Luther King and misrepresent it. And these are the individuals that do that. Those are the ones that, like Uncle B in the earlier video said, those are the ones that you keep away from. And if you missed the earlier video, guys, I can show that again if you guys are wondering what I'm referencing to, because I know that this is probably started and it took a second for me to get all this software moving in the right direction. but Uncle B was was referred to as an oil bearer, and he was on the Papa Rosier Farms. And I put those links in there, and I put a copy of or link to that video. But that's what I'm referring to. In the video, he states to keep those type of men away from you, because those are the ones who seek to take a good man and twist his heart. I just want to just reiterate that, because that's important. Okay. Now we're going to get back to last of the stomach turning. And this is quick. I apologize again, guys.
To the government, you're just a social security number, nothing more. And I'm okay with that, because I don't want or expect the government to know or care about me. Mostly, I want the government to leave me alone. I'm proud to be an American, and I'm proud to be a black man in America. Blacks have made enormous contributions to this country. But let me tell you what our single greatest contribution has been. We have been this nation's moral conscience. Blacks have forced America to live up to its best ideals. Our righteous pursuit of freedom, not love, compelled this nation to seek and find its better self. It's been a long, hard road, but we're close to Dr. King's promised land. We have reached the mountaintops in politics, in medicine, in space, in literature, in sports, in music, in business. No other majority white country has ever been led by a black man or woman. Blacks can demand opportunity. That's every American's right. We can demand freedom. That's every American's right. But we can't demand love. That's no one's right. And that brings me back to God. Blacks have suffered mightily and prospered mightily in America. But in our long journey, we've always been headed in the right direction until now, because we have taken a wrong turn away from God, where we have, as a community, always found strength and solace, and toward government, which offers us nothing but empty promises. I'm Jason Whitlock for Prager University.
I find this extremely hypocritical for Jason Whitlock to even bring up that we're close to Dr. King's promised land when he obviously misrepresented the entire movement. King's promised land consisted of a philosophy that more than recognized love is the very synergistic concept with the way of the world is governed. And the proof of that is that's why he was concerned for the hungry children across the borders of the world's nations. Okay. This is why he was linked up with Malcolm X as far as the Vietnam War, opposing the Vietnam War. So these concepts show you that Jason Whitlock just misrepresented what Martin Luther King wanted. Okay, there are some people who will say he didn't want violence. I'm sure he didn't want violence. I am sure. But I don't think that he just, say we just stand there and let them actually kill us. But that's another conversation. But the common concern for the fellow man discounts with Whitlock's conservative misrepresentation, right? It's very hypocritical for him to acknowledge Black achievements like the Obama presidency, with his past criticisms, and the same for sports excellency when he hates on LeBron James being a leader of any and every, basically being a leader of the same Black community, which he just used here to identify with, only to give ammunition to disingenuous pundits like himself to use as a false narrative later. Okay, so yes, Whitlock was among the others who told LeBron James to shut up and dribble. And that misrepresentation is very common for Whitlock. And there are others whom I will reserve my acknowledgement for the right time. But since we're in the process of discussing the Black civil rights movement, we talked before on Panther and Cage about the Black Lives Matter the movement here, and we talked about how it came to be and what it actually meant. When we talked about this, we were trying to get other people to understand that there were many different leaders within the Black nationalist movement, and that they all had their own different direction as to what was the national Black identity, or what it should be, and how they were different. This is why I said we're going to discuss leadership before we get into actually talking about the actual leaders of the 1960s civil rights movement, because there's a lot of stuff that's out there. We don't even talk about Medgar Evers, and I would think that Medgar Evers would be a big issue, but apparently it's only when Juneteenth happens, which is next month, and February are the only times I hear his name mentioned. But if it's in September or in October or March for that matter, we don't hear about Medgar Evers, right? Here in Brevard County, we have Harry T. Moore. We don't have these discussions. And that's the problem. So anyways, since we were talking about the Black nationalism leaders of the 1960s, I should bring up another example that Miss Evelyn was referring to earlier when she stated that the fact that Malcolm X was one of the most misrepresented civil rights leaders from that era. And recently his name was brought up in the news at the beginning of this year, right?
This letter helps me to understand the pain and guilt that Ray felt for the last 55 years. He conspired to help the NYPD assassinate Malcolm X. On behalf of Ray, he wanted the world to know that he is deeply sorry. I hope that this information helps the Shabazz family, to more clearly understand what happened to their father on that horrible day. As a Black man, I am disgusted to know that what happened 60 years ago is still going on today. We are living under J. Edgar Hoover's Jim Crow system of policing our Black and brown people. He is the architect of these constant injustices and tactics against our people.
The NYPD and FBI allegedly conspired to kill Malcolm X, according to the new information that you saw here, detailed in the late officer's deathbed letter. Now, the daughter of the cop who allegedly penned the confession-filled letter, is claiming that it's hoax. After previous reports that a letter penned from the former New York Police Department officer Raymond Wood on his deathbed included a confession to being involved in a ploy from the police department and the FBI to assassinate Malcolm X, the daughter of the officer is claiming that the letter is a hoax. Kelly Wood came forward to debunk the authenticity of the letter in an interview with NY1 on Friday, February the 26th.
I'm really disappointed in my distant relative, Reggie Wood Jr. Letter is a fake. The envelope that they're presenting is a fake. My father is not a coward. He would have never, ever asked anybody to speak on his behalf after his passing. If he had something to say, he would have said it when he was alive.
The children of the late civil rights leader teamed up with the cousin of the officer, coming forward last week, or the last week of February, at the scene of the murder in Harlem to make the letter public, which you saw. In the letter, Wood alleged that he was tasked with luring the members of Malcolm X's security into committing crimes so that he could arrest them, making an easy target for the gunman. Wood's daughter is saying that the letter was forged by her father's cousin to gain publicity for himself. You heard her stated, "I know that my father did not write this letter," Wood told the news station. "I know that this is not his signature, and I know that the envelope that they're trying to use to somehow justify that the letter was mailed is also a fake." She disputed that claim, that only he publicized the letter after his death to avoid facing the consequences. So you heard her say that my father's not a coward. You heard that. But 3 of the members of the Nation of Islam were arrested for the assassination. But many have long doubted that they were actually behind the murder. The Manhattan DA, district attorney, which I think is Cy Vance, said that last year that his office would reopen the case to investigate if they were wrongly prosecuted in the wake of the letter, and noted its review of the matter is active and ongoing. Now, I haven't heard anything else new, but strangely enough, when you actually pull this information up, the information that was there previously is missing. It's gone. Some of these stories are being pulled off of the internet. So I'm not saying I'm a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but I'm just saying some of the information is being pulled off the internet. So at least stories, maybe they were all retractions and they pulled potentially. But, I saw tons of links and now all of a sudden they're gone. Or maybe there's something where they're not, letting the algorithms of search engines search it. Don't know why, but can always speculate. So what is important is that we note here that, Malcolm X, because we never got a really good chance to talk about him other than, a portion of his philosophy. But Malcolm X is an African-American human rights activist, Muslim African-American human rights activist that was born by the name of Malcolm Little and changed his name upon his Muslim conversion to Malcolm X. And this was done as sort of emancipation because he dropped his slave name, which was Little, not his tribal name from Africa, and not something that, that is independent to him or states who he or his ancestors were as a person. This was most likely the name of his slave owner who gave them his name. And so in order to not appear or not to be as property, because that's where the name was actually given, as property, he had shed that and emancipated as an emancipation. Okay. Now, Malcolm's father, James Earl Little, remember I said we always give you guys some information or whatever that you thought you knew, but you didn't, and it expands and shows you that we do need Black history in schools. But Malcolm's father, James Earl Little, was a Baptist preacher who was murdered by the white supremacist Black Legion. Now, the white supremacist Black Legion is the earlier name of the Ku Klux Klan, the Ku Klux Klan. And like I told you guys, it's actually called the 3 circles. That's what means 3 circles. So there's a lot to this. The Circle of Adelphion, there's a lot to researching these individuals. And that's something you want to get your something you want to get your hands dirty looking into, to be honest with you, so that you are accurate and you know what you're talking about when you're talking about it, because this is a very wide subject, especially here in Florida. There's a lot of stuff here that people want to keep buried and want to hide, and it's already out in the open. You just got to understand what you're seeing when you see it. So what I want to bring up was, like, the fact that his father was murdered by the Black Legion in 1931, and the Michigan authorities refused to persecute those individuals who were responsible. 1931. But according to Jason Whitlock, only 200 years. Slavery was resolved. Jim Crow segregation didn't have an impact, right? This man grew up where he remembers that the Klan, terrorized people. Remember, they tried to bomb his house. So when we actually talk about these threats or these issues, we're not giving the credence to, we're not giving enough influence, enough impact to what this actually meant. He grew up without that father figure, and could have been one of the reasons why he turned to a life of crime, potentially. We don't really know that. We can say, look at dates and figures, but we don't understand the reasoning for it. We couldn't ask him today, because I can tell you a child without a father has a lot that runs through his mind, and there are a lot of issues. And I'm seeing young men today that are lost because they have no father figure. I'm too stretched to be somebody else's stepdad, to be honest with you. That, is very, very, very tough job to do, to step up and take care of someone else's child. And it's just weird. It really is, that we have to understand that these are one of the systemic issues. These are one of the issues that causes systemic issues that we deal with. Although it's rarely ever talked about, unless someone is trying to use it as ammo in a conversation where they're trying to win. And I often see this in competition when you're having a race-related discussion is very obvious. But keep in mind, like I said, 1931. But I thought freedom. I thought we had freedom. What does freedom look like what did it look like to Malcolm X? You can start to see why he had this kind of separatist philosophy. X was assassinated on February 21st of 1965 at age 39 years old at the New York City at the Audubon Ballroom in Washington Heights, and that's nothing that someone didn't know, but that's just the facts. I just want to explore that. And you heard him talk about his Al-Shabazz, the family of Al-Shabazz, after he had attended his Hajj. Which most Muslims, when they make their Hajj, it is a requirement for them as far as their religion, as far as their spirituality. But after his Hajj to Mecca, Malcolm X became known as El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. And you'll hear this when you start watching, some of the documentaries, and you'll hear that when you actually watch Spike Lee's movie, which was, I feel like Spike Lee was an independent, because I believe he reached out to Janet Jackson, some other celebrities to get the funding for this movie. So you can even say that the reason why that movie, even if it is slightly skewed, that movie was only made because of the efforts of individual African Americans in this country who have made contributions. Okay, so if I were you, I would go purchase that movie. Anyone take a look at that. It is a very you probably want to watch it 2 or 3 times so you actually understand it, and then actually watch the movie once, read the book, the autobiography, and then go back and watch the movie 2 more times. When you do that, then I think you'll understand some things. You'll be ready for the next conversations. It's a lot. Now, having stated that, and in closing, we're about to end up closing this up now. After the verdict was read for the Derek Chauvin breaking news hit us. I mean, it wasn't even, I don't even remember how long. It was the same day, but I don't remember how many hours after. It wasn't even an hour. Breaking news hit us with a sensationalized headline saying that a 15-year-old girl was shot by a police officer. I remember that and the information was slow to come out, or at least we felt like it was slow, and I'll give you a reason to that. It later came to be more accurately reported to be a 16-year-old girl by the name of Ma'Khia Bryant. And if you follow Panther and Cage, you know that we covered this in details, and I do believe 18.5, the Ma'Khia Bryant shooting thoroughly enough, or maybe it was 18, thoroughly enough that there was a great deal of controversy surrounding the entire ordeal. All right, LeBron James took to Twitter to call out the police officer who shot Ma'Khia Bryant, saying, "You're next, hashtag accountability." Check for the misinterpretation here now. Check this out. While some interpreted LeBron's tweet to mean that the officer Nicholas Reardon was going to face the same legal fate as Chauvin, obviously, others accused the NBA star of inciting violence against police officers. Of course, many police officers didn't respond well to the tweet, with some saying that James was inciting violence against cops with words. Boy, these people with the badges are awfully fearful. Not all. I'm talking about these ones that, you know, where he's inciting violence, and there was quite a bit. We're going to cover that in a second. An LAPD union called the Los Angeles Police Protective League wrote and sent a letter to the NBA requesting that the NBA investigate James for his tweet towards Officer Nicholas Reardon, the police officer who fatally shot 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant. Man, that's awfully fast. Y'all want them to investigate him for a tweet? And there's human trafficking and pedophilia going on. Y'all don't even want to investigate that. You don't want to investigate Sandra Bland. You don't want to investigate any of that stuff. Each time, people have had to step up to the federal government. You see what I'm saying? Because of the backlash and other reasons, James deleted the tweet. Actually, James later tweeted that the reason that he deleted the tweet was, he said, and I quote, "I'm so damn tired of seeing Black people killed by police. I took the tweet down because it's being used to create more hate. This isn't about one officer. It's about the entire system, and they always use our words to create more racism. I am so desperate for more accountability." While on Fox News, Detective James McBride, a member of the board of directors for the LAPPL, said James was a hypocrite. Along with that, McBride accused James of inciting violence towards police officers. McBride went on to say that LeBron James sent out that tweet, over 50 million followers, to incite violence, is basically what the tweet did. The officer concluded by saying, "No officer wants to take a life, but I'll tell you one thing, that officer saved a life and he's a hero." I'm gonna go back to this one point, because everything else can be seen on a previous Panther and Cage, my ideas and my assessments on the Ma'Khia Bryant situation, or the Ma'Khia Bryant shooting. It's about the entire system. We just heard Martin Luther King's speech saying that you love the man, love the individual, but you hate the system. That's what he was directing, any kind of indifference. And I didn't want to go in that any deeper, because honestly, it's sad that we got to just reiterate this over and over and over again. Some people make it exhausting to be Black. To be honest with you, that's a fact. Okay. Now, there was a lot of controversy going on about this, the whole case in general. This tweet, and the tweet actually, I think tweet actually caused a lot of this extra controversy. But remember this was the Columbus controversy we talked about. That was a picture of a video where the officers were shouting "Blue Lives Matter" at the scene of the shooting. Obviously ridiculous. But I want to talk about a former police officer from Ohio named Nate Sylvester. Recently went viral for going on TikTok and mocking LeBron James' message from the tweet. So following the viral TikTok, Sylvester was reportedly suspended And because of the suspension, a GoFundMe was created for Sylvester, and he gained up to $210,000 so far. The officer even went as far as creating a video for the support, alleging that he's been bullied and vilified.
Now to an Idaho police officer's controversial TikTok video getting a lot of attention online all around the world. The premise, mocking a tweet from NBA star LeBron James. And it comes at a time when shootings involving police are top of mind all across the country. Our Shira Matsuzawa spoke with the officer at the center of the video. And Shira, a lot of people are wondering, because it has been a lightning rod issue, does he regret making this video at this point in time?
Well, Mark, Nate Sylvester is his name. He's a deputy marshal in Blaine County. And I asked him that very question just a short time ago, and he tells me no. He says he simply took what many others are thinking and feeling and put it into what he says is a funny 60-second video. But he wants to be clear. His comments don't reflect the views of the Bellevue Marshal's office or the city.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. No, can you put the knife down, please, sir? Sir, no, sir, don't stab it. No, stop stabbing. Stop. Oh, hold on, it's LeBron.
In just a few days, this TikTok video has been seen 4 million times.
LeBron, hey, yeah, it's me again. Listen, I'm out here at this disturbance call, and there's a guy trying to stab another guy with a knife. What do you think I should do? Why does that matter? Okay, well, they're both black.
In it, Blaine County Deputy Marshal Nate Sylvester is seen having a pretend conversation with NBA star LeBron James.
One guy's trying to stab another guy with a knife. Deadly force is completely justified. I see. So you don't care if a black person kills another black person, but you do care if a white cop kills a black person, even if he's doing it to save the life of another black person?
Sylvester says he made this video after the Lakers star tweeted the words, "You're next," with the hashtag accountability. This after a white police officer shot and killed a black 16-year-old girl in Columbus, Ohio. Body camera video shows the girl had a knife at the time of the shooting and was attacking another black person.
Officer Reardon in Columbus, Ohio, like I said, he was put in an awful, terrible situation, and it's tragic what happened, but that doesn't mean it's not justified. You know, most people in this country don't know what it's like to be a police officer. They don't know what it's like to be in a stressful situation like that.
The basketball star later deleted his tweet, but not before sparking a huge response, especially among people like Nate in the law enforcement community.
I feel like it's important with today's atmosphere, with the sort of the disconnect between law enforcement and the public. It's important that law enforcement officers can speak their mind to the general public and let them know that, hey, we're not the bad guys here. We're out here trying to do the right thing. We're normal, everyday, average human beings, just like you are. And when something like this happens, when an incident like the Columbus, Ohio incident happens, and somebody like LeBron James tweets out something dangerous and inflammatory like he did, we don't appreciate it.
In a statement to KTVB, the executive director for the Wasmith Center for Human Rights said, "While we could and should discuss intent, it is disturbing that the choice was to mock injustice. This is not a time for laughter. This is time for serious conversation." Etched in the stone of the Idaho Anne Frank Human Rights Memorial, Eleanor Roosevelt reminds us, we have to face the fact that either all of us are going to die together or we are going to learn to live together. And if we are to live together, we have to talk. My preference would be that civility and compassion goes viral.
I feel as though we have a responsibility to speak out against stuff like that, because I guess somebody has to be the voice for law enforcement. We don't necessarily have a voice. That officer in Columbus, Ohio, he was forced to make a terrible choice, but he did his duty that day. He did the right thing, and he should have been commended and not crucified by people like LeBron James.
And Sylvester added, if people didn't approve of the video because he was in uniform at the time, he says, well, they're allowed to take breaks, and that's what he was doing when he made that video. So far, he says most of the response to the video has been positive, and for every person who has contacted him sharing their disapproval or distrust, he says there have been 100 others who have said they appreciate it. He also pointed out to me that his video has now been seen more times than the average audience of an NBA game this season. Mark?
Bottom line, a lot of people are talking about this, and will continue to do so for a while. All right, Shira, thank you.
The mindset. Wow. Wow. A lot of people don't know what it's like to be LeBron James, or to be a basketball superstar. A lot of pressure there. To be in his position of representation, right? Just like a lot of people don't know what it's like to be the president. A lot of things a lot of people don't know about. We get that law enforcement officers are human too. We get that. Anyways, I received the opportunity to speak with a friend about this, and because of the previous conversations, we were able to actually move a step forward on this particular issue in discussing this particular reasoning to be a very quick tweet from LeBron James. So the reason why it was a very quick tweet from LeBron James, the social media, there was a social media pundit by the name of Eric D. July stated that this, in his podcast, that he believed that it was important to wait before bringing judgment. And I wholeheartedly agree. I made the assessment that we don't have to have a strong opinion before we find out the details. Everyone knows that I'm big on intellectual standards. But we have to find out the details of the incident first, right? So what I needed to express was one of the reasons, one of the untalked about reasons for people who are bringing up a very swift judgment before the details have been laid out is because people are doing that like a sort of post-traumatic stress response. And, it's easy to say that George Floyd, as opposed to going over all the people prior to the George Floyd having an influence on Black America. So we can talk about the individuals prior to George Floyd, Eric Garner, whatever. We can talk about all the names, right? Is having an effect or an impact. But the killing of a Black man has become too routine. And despite there being more to the incident yet to be released, instead of being reasonable and waiting for the delayed response for the response to the community, many Black people are now just reacting out of a kind of a habit, a kind of post-traumatic stress response. And out of that post-traumatic stress response, it has been developed because of the numerous incidents where the explanations have not been given, where explanations have not met the intellectual standard of clarity and logic, like this, officer who, made the excuse as to why he made that, that post. Because I'm going to tell you, and the reason why I'm going to attack it is because he used the LeBron James. You're going to care when a white cop kills a black person, but you don't care about a Black person killing a Black person. That's an assumption that you make. That issue is being handled. It's being handled in the Black community, and you obviously don't know about it because you don't talk to Black people, because you're not connected, because you're disconnected. And so when we actually do have talks about that, you're not there. And maybe the conversation never gets brought up to your Black friends because you don't bring it up. And I'm pretty sure you don't bring it up because you don't know how to talk about it. You don't know how to tread. Well, you should be a Panther and Cage audience member so that you can actually look at this information from your own comfort of your own home, think about it, and then responsibly ask the questions when, we have another freestyle if you like. But to sit there and say that, Black people don't care about when other Black people, kill, we actually do. We're actually talking amongst each other about it. We are trying to deal with it. And in fact, I deal with it for the past 2 weeks, almost every single day. Okay, because I can tell you, I know some youth that are heading in the wrong direction, and I've tried my best to try to talk to them. But like I stated earlier, it is very hard to be a stepfather. Okay, and there's only so much that every Black man can extend himself. But if you're so concerned about that issue, why don't you bring up the prison industrial complex and talk about the disparity of numbers that, incarcerate black men 3 times to white men, and then tell me that, if we can get those men out of prison and into the home where they're supposed to be, without the government telling them to get out, another systemic issue, can we make a difference in those young men's lives and provide, examples so that they don't take the fashionable or popular direction or road in the wrong direction. It's really funny how like they keep bringing that stuff up. As a law enforcement officer, it's very insulting for you to say that. And I will not stand and let a law enforcement officer take upon a white supremacist narrative. You have to be smarter than that, because law enforcement was created from slave patrols. So to disassociate yourself from the white supremacy, you must not use their narratives. It's just that simple. And as a law enforcement officer, when you're seeing this stuff day in and day out, this is something that you can actually look at and say, okay, I see this for what, this is a little bit deeper than what this person may see. So I know that this doesn't mean that, oh, it's in his DNA that he has to actually kill another black person. That's absolutely insane to use that. And I don't understand the logic that everyone thinks that it was just okay for this officer to say that. The video shows you what we're talking about when we say white supremacy has infiltrated law enforcement, and it is a lie. Anyway, they don't certainly meet the standard of fairness, I can tell you that. When it comes to meeting these intellectual standards, the no clarity, no logic, on these explanations. Many times, that's why the question is even asked in the first place. It's not a very good thing for anyone emotionally invested in these incidents, okay? Within that Panther and Cage vlogcast where we talked about Ma'Khia Bryant, I expressed my personal assessment on the unrealistic expectations of police. But the reason that people have such an expectation of excellence for police is because of how the police have advertised themselves. And because of that, because of how the police supporters and the police apologists continue to send the message that police officers are heroes, more often I hear that law enforcement are humans too. I agree with that. But the reason why it is even, why even a shooting of a black man that is in possession of a gun is questioned is because humans make mistakes. Okay, I know they're heroes. They're also humans. Well, humans make mistakes. So we have a right to question that, okay? Especially when you're being paid by the tax dollars, that's your salary. So at that point, some people are invested in their community. Some people are invested in their governments, but we can't move beyond the city level as African Americans, because the moment we do, we try to cash a check that's 60 grand or more at the bank, and all of a sudden it's being held because this lady doesn't believe that you should be cashing a check, or your house doesn't get appraised at the appropriate value until you remove all of the blackness that's in the house. And then yet you say that's freedom. Remember in a previous Panther and Cage where we talked about the message that is sent out, how the message can be interpreted. And you can see from the previous video where Officer Sylvester acknowledges that there's no one really speaking out for police officers, or at least he said that the police had no one to speak for them. However, I say yes, they did. They chose to let Sheriff Earl Clark speak for them. They chose to allow Harry Hulk for years speak for them. Or what about that sheriff that went viral when he put the bullet up with the Black Lives Matter acronyms on it? You remember that, when he did that in front of the camera? Yet they told Tommy Norman that he wasn't allowed to post to his personal social media without their approval. And then I don't want to hear the excuse that this is about keeping the public safe, because the moment that there's a fugitive, that comes that's done something, the suspect, they will flash his face and his name across, they'll plaster across the evening news, as if then law enforcement then wants to reach out to the community to do their job. And I don't disagree with that 100%. But my point is that if you're going to trust the community to do such an important task, there should be a degree of transparency that matches that same request. I know that's hard. I know a lot of law enforcement supporters are going to hate me for that. Hate me. Because that's fact. That's a hard one that's been waiting, that you guys need to understand. If you're going to ask us to look and do your job or help you with the community, which is just we're supposed to, right? Then it's not unfair for the community to ask for a degree of transparency that matches that request. Sometimes they need to know the difference. They need to know the details behind what's going on. Okay, you would get certain posts. I just saw one in our own community in Bavar about I don't even want to mention her name. I'll just say that one individual posted about it, saying what's being done about it, and right after that, I think I saw some other stuff. But my point is that kind of stuff won't happen because the people want to be connected to the community. They do care about their government, and they are invested. But for you to insinuate that they aren't, that's where the disconnect happens. When I said the message and how you interpret it, some people don't like the way I bring the message. We wouldn't be here if someone else didn't fail on communicating that message to you. So if the first 19 people tried to tell you and you wouldn't listen, and then you don't like the way I said, it might not be us, it might be you. You have to be open and objective. What that actually means is that there's not a delay 10 days before the community is notified of what has actually transpired when the incident involves the life of one of the members of the community. I further expressed that to the person I was having a conversation with, that 9/11 has had a hand in raising the optics and the appearance of heroism of law enforcement. And that is fact. And that is my personal opinion. Also, that people call the police and rely on them too much. And that actually was discovered to be the case in an investigation led by the New Jersey Senator Cory Booker a few weeks ago.
In my lifetime, there are more people that have died of gun violence than in every single war in our nation's history. I feel like we live in a bizarro world where we forget the very mandate of our government, of our federal government. And so the best mandate is perhaps the Constitution of the United States of America, that begins with the purpose of why we're all here. And I just read the first 4 reasons why we're here. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense. And if you look at that in the context of the slaughter of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Americans, I'm roughly 50 years old. In my lifetime, there are more people that have died of gun violence than in every single war in our nation's history, from the Revolution to the current wars going on right now. Why are we here? Why did we establish this government if not to better defend ourselves? And yet we see slaughter every day and don't understand that it's not just the horrors of that, but we are way out of step with every other nation on the planet Earth in the number of Americans that are being killed. And somehow we don't think we have the power to stop this. And it hurts. I tell you, these are not data. This is not statistics. I've stood on too many sidewalks that were stained with blood. I've seen too many bodies covered. More than one occasion, Mr. Chairman, me or one of the people I was with tried desperately to stop someone from bleeding out from gunshot wounds. And it trashes our strength and our economy, because every gunshot wound in America costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that's nothing compared to what it's doing to our nation's soul. We must create a more beloved community. And the lies or the fear-mongering about how somehow law-abiding citizens won't have access to guns is just belied by the evidence and the data. I am so grateful that we have actually a law enforcement officer, because as a person who was a mayor of a city, God bless us, we've driven down crime under my leadership as mayor. The current mayor is doing an extraordinary job. But we know, who are trying to protect citizens, how tragic it is that we can't even do the things that we know. Our arms are tied. we are not fulfilling our mandate. We do not have domestic tranquility. We do not have a common defense with death levels that no other country sees. And dear God, clearly we do not have justice.
5% of the world's population is what America is, yet we are overrepresenting the prisons. I think we're at 25%. It's some astronomical number. But committee basically is what you just saw is a committee hearing on the policing reform engaged in early discussions. And Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, California, Congresswoman Karen Bass, and other members of Congress, they previously had efforts. They resulted where Republicans were arguing that a Democratic bill put too much power and responsibility at the federal level. Tim Scott, after being appointed as the point person for crafting a policy, a policing reform bill by Mitch McConnell, pushed his own policing reform bill last year, only to have the Senate Democrats filibuster it. So no progress as of last year. And then Scott's bill proposed to use the federal grant money to incentivize police officers, police departments to use the body cameras along with the strategies for de-escalating situations. But by the end of the year, a policing reform bill looked like it would stay in the legislative graveyard. Republicans refused to sign the Democrats' policing bill, and the Democrats viewed the Republican counteroffer as a non-starter. So after Democrats took control of the House of Representatives, the George Floyd Policing Act passed in March. And we covered that fact also in a previous Panther and Cage. But since then, it's faced opposition from the Republicans in the Senate. The legislation bars the law enforcement from engaging in racial profiling, prohibits chokeholds and no-knock warrants. It also creates a national police misconduct registry. Now, these are the current efforts and where we are right now. So it's still in contention. But the point of this main Panther and Cage, the main point of this was that there are misrepresentations and misinterpretations. We talked about the messages before, so that's out of the way. Now we're talking about the misrepresentations. We know that this is established fact. So now we can move on with our conversation. We have talked about systemic racism and systemic, the existence of systemic racism. And we talked about that last Panther and Cage. So we've addressed it quite a bit, and that's a lot of progress if you were paying attention. I know sometimes I give you that hard message, but hey, life is hard. Got to give it to you. Got to give it to you so we can move forward. Kind of tired of talking about it, to be honest with you. So we are at a point where we're going to close out. It is 2 hours. I try not to go over 2 hours. I try to stick this information to you as delicate as possible. But like I said, this has been Panther and Cage Freestyle 8. And we are glad to have you in the audience. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and send me messages if you like. The DMs, most people send me direct messages. So go ahead and give them DMs if you like. But I just wanted to be able to thank you guys for participating. Welcome you to the next week's Panther and Cage. Hopefully we'll be able to move forward on some issues dealing with the Irish American heritage. Any other questions or any issues that we want to talk about? And I do want someone to actually get involved in the reporting about, the Italian American heritage in America. So if there's any Italians out there, which I know a few, but I don't want to ask them yet because I know they're quite busy. But if there's anyone who wants to take the time to actually let's sit and talk about some of the major points, and it won't take long, go ahead and message me, let me know, and we'll get that facilitated. But as for now, this has been Panther and Cage Freestyle 8, and I'd like to tell you guys thank you for participating. Thank you for coming in, Willie Taylor. I hope to get to talk to you soon, Telly. I'm looking for you, but I hope that everything is well with you and all your families. And I wish you guys peace, love, and may the Most High continue to guide your path.